Yankaravavahai Tejasvinavaditamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Yesterday we saw 8th verse, which says that when you are meditating an attitude of duality, that I am different from the Lord, okay, so that is not something which is the highest. The highest is non-dual vision, I am the Lord, and that is purifying. Okay. Now, one thing we have to understand, that this is not something which is based on just make-believe. Okay? So it is a reality. Why it is purifying? Because that is the reality. So let us look that a common man starts believing that I am the king or I am the prime minister and starts acting as one. What will it lead to? He will end up in mental hospital. Right? Because it's not that you somehow start thinking that you are big and start acting big. That is not what is meant here. Okay? If you happen to be limitless and you go around thinking I'm limited, then in fact everybody who lives their life like a beggar, okay, thinking that I am so insignificant in the countless flow of time, my existence itself is something which is 80, 100 years is so insignificant. And within these 80 years, no matter what I accomplish, and I am very proud of accomplishing, it is so insignificant. Okay? And I think I am somebody great. That is something which is the greatest delusion. If this is the reality about myself, that I am little, so tiny, and I start thinking I am the cause of the universe, from which the whole universe comes about, by which the whole universe is sustained, unto which the whole universe resolves. If this tiny individual starts believing I am the cause, without it being so, that would be the greatest delusion. Okay. So here we are not trying to reprogram the mind to make us believe that I am somebody very big. It is a fact. There happens to be a fact that this little individual is like an equation. This individual, there is some reality about my body, there is some reality about my mind, nobody is denying it. Okay? But there is some reality about me, which is my essential nature, which I miss out. Okay? And there is also some reality about the cause of the universe, which apparently is so much bigger than me, but there is a point of resolution. Okay? So, based on inquiry, as we have seen, karma will not get me what I am searching for. It is the knowledge which is going to give me what I am searching for. Why? Because I am already free. This is the reality about me, but I have taken myself to be this insignificant being. So what we did yesterday was look at this I, one side of the equation, what our normal conclusions are, that I am the body, I am the mind, and this is what gives me the limitation that we all suffer from. Okay? Now we have seen that this physical body is nothing but 5 elements, and the mind also is nothing but these 5 elements, subtle elements. So that is not I. So when all that, what I thought I was, is eliminated as not I, can I say I cease to exist? No. Everybody knows I am. Then the question is, what is my real nature? Then my real nature, I need not go and search there. I am here, self-evident to me. So this is where Shastra points out that, hey, look at the thoughts, they come and go. And between the thought is the silence. All that happens, silence is replaced by thought, thought is replaced by silence. This is all something which is variable. What is the invariable presence? While there is a thought, while there is a silence, there is this awareness, consciousness. Consciousness is not an object. There is only one thing that is not available to you as an object, which is consciousness. But when I say the word consciousness, even though you have never seen it as an object, you all understand what it is. So this is what we say, it is self-evident. It is available to me in my buddhi as self-evident I. Awareness, which is there to know the presence of a thought, coming of the silence, presence of another thought, that is something which is what we mean by consciousness. That consciousness is already free from any thought that comes and goes. Okay. What is the relationship between consciousness and the thought? As we have seen, consciousness is independent of the thought, but if you look at the thought, what is the content of any thought? You think of a tree, you think of sun, you think of moon. What is the content of that thought? Can the thought exist without the presence of consciousness? Thought is like this desk. You can't say that it is mithya. You can't say it is an illusion. But when you look at the content of the desk, all you find is wood, and wood is already free from being the desk. That is why you can just use this piece of wood tomorrow and make some other object. Okay. Thought is like this desk. It is nothing but awareness in that given name and form. Okay. So thought is mithya and consciousness is satya. Consciousness exists independently of any given thought. This is why whatever thought we have had, it doesn't stick to us. You go to deep sleep, everything that you have thought of during the day, it's all gone. Nothing sticks to you. If that is my real nature, if any thought or quality of thought is my real nature, it will stick to me. It will always be there. You find yourself, every day you are given an experience of deep sleep, where you are free from every thought that you have thought of, and you are there. Okay? So this awareness, no thought sticks to this awareness. No thought even though it is an inappropriate thought, it doesn't make this awareness impure. The smallness of the desk does not make the wood small. Wood is just wood. It appears to be small. Okay? So this is one side of the equation, consciousness, which is free. Okay? The other side of the equation is what we say, Ishvara. Ishvara. First of all, let us look a little bit more deeply, and because we have seen that the whole universe that we observe, you cannot deny that there are laws. Okay? So these laws are nothing but manifestation of intelligence, and what we call laws is from a given standpoint. Okay? So that means if you really look into what is the nature of Ishvara, you will come to intelligence. Intelligence which manifests in form of laws in every area of my life. Then it also shows that it's not only the laws, but it is also the objects that are governed by these laws. So in fact, when I look at any given object, which is nothing but 5 elements combined with different permutations and combinations. The whole Jagat is 5 elements with different permutations and combinations. If you look at the scientific model, you can go back and say everything is nothing but atoms and particles which are combined with different atoms and particles. Okay? But there is an intelligence which combines them in an organized manner to create the objects which are highly sophisticatedly put together. So that means the intelligence is not only there, right now billions of cells are working in harmony to make my body behave within certain parameters, do all these functions. There is the presence of an intelligence which is not my little intelligence. So that intelligence is something which is here, it is there, it is there, it is there, it is there, making everybody's body what it is. My mind is able to think, okay? And this is the quality of my thinking will make me intelligent or not intelligent. Okay? But there is much more fundamental intelligence which brings about those neurons, puts them together and gives me this human brain which has that capacity to think. Where there is human intelligence, exactly there is a much more fundamental intelligence which makes the whole mechanism possible. Okay? And that basic intelligence, much more fundamental intelligence, not only makes my brain what it is, makes his brain what it is, makes your brain what it is, makes animal's brain what it is, bird's brain what it is. That intelligence is all pervasive, both in form of laws and in form of objects. Okay? This is what we call Ishvara. So me, the individual, when I look at my true nature, it is consciousness. Now Ishvara, as we understand, is intelligence which is all pervasive. I have to ask, is this the final reality about Ishvara? About the nature of Ishvara? The teaching says that even that all intelligence, which is infinitely bigger than your little intelligence, okay, is what we call mithya, in the sense that it is much bigger than this. There is a huge, imagine that there is one table and there is another much larger table. But at that much larger table, when you look at the content, if it is wood, what would be? At the level of wood, will there be any difference whatsoever? Same thing. Ishvara, all intelligence, if you look at the relationship between all intelligence and consciousness, the relationship is that of Satyam and Mithya. Consciousness, which one is Satyam and which one is Mithya? Of the two. All intelligence or consciousness?
Consciousness.
What is more fundamental? Okay. Without consciousness, there is no intelligence, whether little or big. Okay? But consciousness is totally independent of any intelligence. To make us comprehend this, the example of wave, ocean and water is given. We are not telling that wave is an illusion. Wave has some reality, empirically true. Okay. Ocean is that which is much bigger. If the wave, without understanding that both of them resolve in water, starts believing and acting as though I am the wave and I am the king, from me everything comes, the wave would be deluded. But if the wave is wise wave, the wise wave has inquired, what is the truth of this form, this name and form? And we see that it is nothing but water. Ocean, much bigger. But what is the content of ocean? Nothing but water. H2O is free from being wave and being the ocean. Okay? It does not take on the smallness or the bigness. It is intrinsically free. Okay? If the person understands that and contemplates on that reality, according to Ramana, this is the purest. Why the purest? If it is something which is unpure and made pure, what happens?
Some residue will be there.
Slowly, you keep this table outside, you don't do anything. You come back after 5 days, it will be all dusty. Okay? If Atma is impure and you have to do something to make it pure, any time it will become impure again. Okay. Here it is a fact. No thought touches consciousness. It is always pure, not subject to, it can never get tainted by anything. Okay? So this is something which is what one has to understand and meditate upon. The next verse. Bhava shunya sat bhava sustitihi bhavana balat bhaktir uttama. So there he says, the best devotion is abidance in one's own self, free from duality, by the strength of contemplation, I am He. Okay? I am He is the cause of the universe. Now, one more thing we need to understand this clearly. Okay? Now, when you say that the truth of I and truth of Ishvara is nothing but consciousness, where is consciousness? Is it something which is located here only? Are there pockets of consciousness? I can say I am independent of this body and mind and I am consciousness. So it's my individual personal consciousness. He is understanding, he is free from body and mind, and this is his consciousness, which is free from the conditions of his body and mind. If you look at the consciousness like that, how many consciousness you will find?
Infinite.
Endless consciousness, all pockets of consciousness. Okay? But if you understand that I am this consciousness, he is the consciousness, in between two of us is the space. Okay? My consciousness is brought about by Ishvara, all intelligence, the truth of which is also consciousness. He is consciousness. In between there is Ishvara. In between us there is space. Space is also nothing but manifestation of Ishvara. There is all intelligence there which has made space what it is. And the truth of that all intelligence is also consciousness. Where will you not find consciousness? Are there pockets of consciousness? No. There is only one consciousness. One consciousness which is free from every object, every form, every characteristic. It is in and through everything. To understand this clearly, it is very important. Surya, the pot is there. Doesn't matter, just. You need to understand a few things. Okay? This, if I ask you, what is inside this pot? Space. Okay? And what is this room? If it was a confined room, what is there in this room? Space. Okay? Now this space seems to be very, very small compared to this big space of the room. Okay? Now you have to ask, is really this space confined to the pot? It seems like there is some space which is confined to the pot. If you move this pot from here to here, does the space which is very specific to it moves from here to here?
Space specific to it doesn't move.
No. No. It doesn't move. This is science. It doesn't move. The pot moves in space. The space does not move from here to here. Yeah, no. The space is here. The pot moves in space. Even if the water in the pot is polluted, okay, which is the space polluted? No. Okay. It is one undivided space in which every object moves. The space doesn't move along with the object. This is a fact. Okay. Consciousness is exactly, imagine this to be your body. This is the core consciousness which is appearing in here, giving rise to all the thoughts and everything. Okay. And your mind, your mind, your mind, your mind. But it is not confined to it. The reality is, consciousness is one, undivided, in which everything moves. Okay. Itself has no boundaries. It has no limitation. So therefore, just I'm not the body and I'm not the mind and I'm consciousness is not going to give you the right knowledge of what is the nature of consciousness. That consciousness is not something which is confined to your body. It is something which is all pervasive. Other way of looking at it is that if I say I am consciousness, if he says he is consciousness, if I have already understood that I am not as good as the body and mind, what is the attribute of my consciousness that will make it different from his consciousness? If you say there are two, one should be different from the other. Okay? It is one. And in between space, there is also what? Ishvara, all intelligence. The truth of it is consciousness. Consciousness is in and through everything. In fact, in this whole Jagat, the only thing which is all pervasive in terms of our empirical world is space. Space is all pervasive. Okay? Now what we talk about is that space itself comes about because of all intelligence, Ishvara, and the truth of that is consciousness. So this consciousness that we are talking about is the truth of the very space. Okay. This is what? Where is this consciousness available to you? In your buddhi. This is I. You think it is small, but upon inquiry, what do you discover? that it is all pervasive. Now the second thing that you must understand, without which the teaching of Vedanta is not complete. Okay? It may seem to you that there is one consciousness which is pervading everything, and then there is this whole Jagat. So there are two things. One is the consciousness which pervades everything, which is free from attributes of body, mind, sense complex. And second is the universe with all these different names and forms, which it pervades. What this verse is talking about is the presence of non-duality. Non-duality means what? There are no two things. There is only one. Okay. So you see so many different forms. How can you say that there is only one? Again, we come back to Satyam and Mithya. Okay. What is Satyam? Here is wood. If you see thousands of desks, if you count the name and form, how many forms are there? Thousands. But if you count the content, how many is there?
Only one.
Only one. The others, they don't count. You don't say that they are not existing, but they don't count. All that is here is one. Because Mithya has no real existence apart from Satya. So when you look at all these names and forms, let us first look at the Vedic model. All the names and forms are nothing but 5 elements. Okay? And when you talk about, when Chandogya Upanishad talks about creation, they talk about, the first is Akasha. Akashat Vayuhu, Vayor Agnihi, Agni Apaha, Apav Prithvi. Okay? So that means that the subtlest is space. How did this space come about? Space came into manifestation. How did it come about? Where is the material? When you talk about creation, then you need to think about two kinds of causes. One is what we call the efficient cause, and the second is material cause. When there is a pot, there is what? Two causes. One is the pot maker, who is the efficient cause, and the material with which the pot maker makes the pot is what we call material cause, which is clay in this case. Okay. If you look in terms of the whole creation, the space, air, water, 5 elements are yet to come, and then everything else, which is nothing but combination of these 5 elements, is yet to come. Okay. So what is the material from which this all intelligence made space? If there was already some material, already there is a creation. Then you have to ask who made that material from which this Ishvara used that material to create the world. Okay. In the case of the entire universe, Ishvara, the intelligence, is both the efficient cause, the maker, as well as the material. So that means this all intelligence as though manifests in form of space. It's already there. Intelligence is already there, all intelligence. It manifests, then from space there is some additional characteristics acquired to make it Akashat Vayuhu. Taittiriya Upanishad. Okay. Further complexity, then 5 elements again come together to become the whole universe. So that means everything in this universe, this is what I call it. What would I call it? What does it mean then? This is what I would call Mithya. Body is Mithya because it depends upon 5 elements for its existence. If I take out all the 5 elements, there is no body. Take out water. Take out all the pranic functions, which is caused through fire. The space which is inside. The entire body does not exist without these 5 elements. So what is body? Body is what we would call mithya. If you look at the basic scientific model, you can say that this body, in fact body is what is body? Body is a name. Okay? If you say this is the body, I'll say okay, I'll take out the hand because hand is not the body. I'll take out the legs because the leg is not the body. I'll take out the kidney because kidney is not the body. I'll take out liver because liver is not the body. I'll take out everything. What will remain? I'll take out blood, muscles. What will remain?
Still
What
body
does
will-
it mean? Each one which is not body, if I take out, nothing will remain. So that means body is nothing but a name for a given form, which is nothing but an assembly of different parts. So that means all non-bodies, which is liver is not body, kidney is not body, all non-bodies come together and make it into a body. It's a name. For increased function, you give it a further name. Okay. So the body has a dependent reality. The mind itself, as we have seen, has a dependent reality. Mind is nothing but different thoughts, different types of thoughts. The thoughts cannot exist without the presence of awareness. This body cannot exist without 5 elements. The 5 elements cannot exist without the all intelligence and consciousness, and all intelligence cannot exist without consciousness. So that means all along everything is mithya. The body is mithya because it cannot exist without 5 elements. 5 elements are mithya because they cannot exist without all intelligence. And all intelligence is also mithya because it cannot exist without consciousness. So that means the whole world is nothing but forms within forms, within forms, within forms. The content is only one. So there are no 2 things in the universe. Forms don't count.
Does consciousness consist of this Apa Prithvi, 5 elements?
No, it is free from that.
It's
Okay?
outside.
It is totally free from the consciousness. There is this all intelligence. All intelligence manifests in form of space. Space then somehow is further modified to become into air, then air into Agni, Agni into water, water into Prithvi. Okay. Each of these 5 elements actually depends upon the other. So at every level, one depends upon the other. But there is as no value added.
What is Jiva?
Okay, let us
Where it comes
Jiva, exactly. So
There's so many other, like
Yes,
Maya also,
yes.
we'll touch something now. it is
1
like-
minute, all
it's
this
not
will
like-
come because you have to now. Jiva is a term that you need to understand very clearly because we create concepts, Maya, Jiva, the whole Vedanta becomes all full of names and concepts and we don't understand anything basically. It just becomes scholarship. Here it is something which is very, very easy to understand. What is this so-called Jiva? Okay? So Jiva consists of what we call Sthula, Sukshma and Karana Sharira. Okay? And then there is what we call ignorance there. This is what the name which gives me the feeling that I am an individual. This is what we call Jiva. So what is going on here? Okay? So this what we call Sthula Sharira is a physical body. So Jiva is the one who thinks I am as good as the physical body. Okay? Now the physical body does not operate without the mind. So this is what we call Sukshma Sharira. So Jiva is as though the combination of Sthula Sharira, Sukshma Sharira, which is all my subtle functions. But this given body that you have is distinct from my body. How? Why? So this is what we call, there are causes. This causes is what we say, all the past actions that are done, which are combined together to give you this given particular body, those causes is what we call Karana Sharira. So each one of us is who the person is because of some past causes. This is what we talk about, the intelligent network that Surya was talking about. Who makes you you? If you go back, you can go back to Big Bang. You're connected to causes within causes within causes within causes. And intelligence is the one, Ishvara is the one which connects these causes to make you who you are. Okay? So this cause is what we call the Karana Sharira. Okay? So there are three things operating. Sthula Sharira, Sukshma Sharira and Karana Sharira. Now, if they were just operating, there would be no problem. But because of the ignorance of what the nature is, I take myself to be as good as all these three. So this is what we call the condition of Jiva. It is identification with physical, subtle and causal body due to ignorance. What is the Swarupa of Jiva, the individual? What is the real nature of the individual? It is consciousness. So that means at any given point in time, in a given birth, which is human or equivalent birth, you can inquire into what is my real nature, and that status of individuality which is due to ignorance, you can inquire into the whole thing and undo the ignorance once and for all. So you can give up your Jivatvam and you understand the nature, the truth of Jiva is Parabrahma. Aham Brahma Asmi. Okay. So this Jiva is due to ignorance. When you identify with physical, subtle and causal body, okay, and think that you are an individual who has to live in the universe as, and get your fulfillment by accomplishing a few things. This whole status is what we call Jiva. So, here what you have to understand is the entire universe can be first brought down to 5 elements. Those 5 elements also depend upon all intelligence. And the truth of all intelligence is consciousness. Okay? So that means there is only one reality which is independently existing of others. Everything else has a dependent existence. When it has a dependent existence, it is mithya. It doesn't really count. It is form with a given name, it has a given function, but in terms of content, it has no content. Brahma Satyam Jagan Mithya. This is what the Upanishads talk about. It is something which is available for me to understand based on the Upadesha of the Shruti. It's not just something that I quote and impress people with, no. or make belief that, oh, I'm Brahman. No. This is a fact.
Panchabhuta is also Mithya only.
Yeah, Panchabhuta is also Mithya. Because they depend on intelligence. Without the all intelligence, they cannot exist. Anything which has a dependent existence is Mithya. And even Ishwaratvam is Mithya. Because the all intelligence also depends upon consciousness for its existence. So that means, it's a good question you are asking. In Jiva, there is this so-called Sukshma, Sthula and Karana, Sharira, okay, which is Mithya, and the truth is consciousness. Okay. In all intelligence, Ishvara, all knowledge, which makes Sthula, Sukshma and Karana of everyone. And also 5 elements within which all these jivas exist. All intelligence, that Ishwaratvam, the status of being Ishvara is Mithya because it depends upon consciousness for its existence. So in Jiva, Jivatvam is Mithya. In Ishvara, Ishwaratvam is Mithya. The Swarupa of Jiva is consciousness. The Swarupa of Ishvara is also consciousness. So the whole universe is Mithya. There is only one Satya. That's why it becomes non-dual. Otherwise you will think that there is one thing which is consciousness, which is pervading everything, and then there are all these objects which are independent of consciousness. No. So first stage is you have to make this little consciousness, pocket of consciousness, by understanding that it is all pervasive. But that's not enough. Second, you have to understand that there is no object at all. It all depends upon this consciousness. It is one non-dual consciousness. This is the truth of the whole universe, which appears on one hand as the total, which is what we call Ishvara, on the other hand as an individual within the total, which is what we call Jiva. Okay? Now, the next. These are very important verses, so I am spending time. I don't just want to, because this is something that you need to understand. This is crux of the teaching. Drusthale mana swasthata kriya bhakti yoga bodhascha nishchitam. Abiding of the mind in the heart is action, devotion, yoga and knowledge. This is confirmed view of Shruti. Okay? One thing is very, very important is that there is some a very popular belief that there are different paths to the truth. Okay? So that means there is what we call karma. Karma yoga can lead to the truth. Then bhakti can lead to the truth. Dhanam can lead to the truth. Is something that different paths can lead you to the truth. Here what Ramana is saying is that it's not that different people do different things. One person requires all 4 in order to gain the knowledge. Okay? Knowledge is, if basically I am limitless, okay, and I think of myself to be limited, I just have to know my true nature based on inquiry. What choice do I have? I have no choice. Because it's a mistake. It's a mistake that I am making based on my ignorance, and what is opposed to ignorance is knowledge. Okay? So then I have no choice. So that means knowledge, as we started, the very starting point is no karma is going to get you what you are looking for. It's only the knowledge. So that means knowledge is non-negotiable. Okay? But as we have also seen, that does not then mean karma is useless. Karma becomes a very important means for me to gain the maturity. If I convert any given karma into karma yoga, that we have seen what is karma yoga. So that means karma is also very much needed. But not in our normal sense of using karma to get whatever we want, not in that sense. Now, as you begin to understand that all that is here is Ishvara, how can you not? In fact, it's not that you need to connect to Ishvara and do bhakti. You say, how can I ever be away from Ishvara? Even if I try to be away from Ishvara, where will you go? Space is Ishvara. Water is Ishvara. Every form is Ishvara. Every law is Ishvara. How can you ever be away from Ishvara is your understanding. At no given point in time of my life I can be away from Ishvara. Then, what is that? That is devotion. That is how I relate to Ishvara. Otherwise, I relate to my concept of what is Ishvara, which is not the truth of Ishvara at all. Okay. The person who knows this reality is the greatest devotee. Because it's not the partial understanding of something that you think is Ishvara and then you relate in your own way. When you understand that I don't, in fact, in every relationship, I can never be away from Ishvara. When I'm relating to you, okay, it is two people coming together. So many laws at work to make the two people come together. Your mind, so many laws which makes mind what it is. My mind, so many laws are involved. All the way there is Ishvara. Okay. So this is what, at no point in time I can be away from Ishvara. This is the Gnani is the greatest devotee. And in order to know this reality, you can't ignore the presence of Ishvara. You need to bring Ishvara in your life because Ishvara is the reality. You can't miss it from your understanding. Because if you miss it, you're not living in keeping with what is. You are living from your own thinking, which is not corresponding to what is. So that means that devotion will automatically come. There is no such thing called dry knowledge. Because the knowledge understanding has two parts. Tvam and Tat. You have to understand. You can't ignore. And the more you understand Ishvara, the devotion becomes absolutely natural. Very spontaneous. Okay? So this is where Ramana is saying that action, devotion, knowledge and karma yoga, all that is something which is, when you have mixture of one person has to have all in order for the knowledge to fructify and become something which is real. Otherwise it remains partial. Okay? So that means you need to take care of your understanding of reality and also your personal growth. They go hand in hand for this knowledge to take place and to be assimilated well. The next, Vayu Rodhanat Liyate Mana Jala Pakshivat Rodha Sadhanam. So here he is coming back to, like a net for a bird, discipline of breath is a means for restraining the mind. By discipline of breathing, the mind is absorbed. Okay? So this is again, he comes back to how do you understand this reality which is fundamentally so different from what you think you are. Okay? So this is where yesterday your question was that you need the mind. Okay? Even to understand this so-called limitless, it doesn't happen in vacuum. The mind is where the confusion is, and the mind is where the ignorance is removed. Any ignorance is like that. Okay? So for example, when you understand that the time and space is relative in nature, where does this knowledge take place?
Mind.
In the mind, absolutely. You think that you are limited. Where is this conclusion?
Mind.
In the mind, exactly. So where is this, the whole universe is including the presence of I am is understood in the mind. When you say I am sad, where does it take place? In the mind.
But
So
that
you
again
need
won't happen
mind.
without the intellect.
1 minute, please, because I need to finish. I have many things to do. So, you can ask your questions in the satsang, because otherwise,
Continuity.
yeah. Okay. So that means the mind is the place where the knowledge will take place, whether it is knowledge of anything else or it is knowledge of oneself.
Exactly.
Yeah. Now, in everything else, the mind knows of something which is either objectified or it is inferred. Here, Atma I can never be objectified or inferred. It is something which is available to me as I am, as self-evident I. I use the words of Vedas which reveal my true nature, contemplate upon them. That's why you need Shravanam. You need to listen to what Shastra is saying. Where is it done? In the mind. You need mind, without which there is no pursuit. Okay? But unlike everything else, here the mind understands its own truth. It understands its own relativity. In everything else, the mind remains intact and it knows different things. Here, the nature is, the mind knows that this thought itself has its more basic truth, which is consciousness. Okay? So that means you need to prepare the mind so that this subtle inquiry can take place. This is why, in fact, what is interesting is that many times when people listen to Vedanta, they feel, my God, how come this knowledge is not available to the whole humanity? You feel like, let's bring everyone and let everyone listen to this because it is so important. How many people are going to come? How many? Very few. Okay. Why? Because their minds are totally absorbed with whatever the stimuli that is produced by day-to-day experiences and what they can get out of it. They just don't have enough leisure to look at anything beyond. This is why this morning you were saying that change of perspective is so important, but how many people are ready for it? Okay? People are so satisfied with their present, whatever their understanding of the world, and within that what they need to get, and very busy trying to get what they think is important, which actually doesn't get them very far. Okay? So that means you need to make the mind which has a certain leisure, which will say, okay, all this is fine, but I need to look into something which is more fundamental. How will you start with creating that mind which is a little bit inquiry based, which is wanting to see beyond the obvious? You need to first quieten it. This is what Ramana is saying. Because mind is the place where knowledge takes place. Mind is the place where even desire to know takes place. But even to have that desire to know, you have to have a certain discretion. You have to have a certain bent of mind. As you said, you want to convince people, but they don't even see the value. And they are smart, successful, honest people, but it doesn't come. So that means that it doesn't happen unless you want to look for certain answers. Okay? And one greatest way to make the person, otherwise we all work all the time at a very superficial level. Okay? The mind is engaged in a very superficial level. We are all the time distracted and thinking is very fast, shallow, and we think we acquire a lot of information, we don't analyze it enough, we don't stay with it, we don't try to see what it actually means. Okay? So from this, if you want to make it deep and where you become interested in changing your perspective, he says you start with breathing. Okay? Then breathing, and that's the first step.
Controlling
Right?
the breath.
Absolutely. You go, Lily says the breathing function, The more you just start, as Surya is saying, start with simple thing like meditation. Just first, not even meditation, just breathing. When you do this breathing, automatically you will slow down a little. And that's the first step to this huge discovery of I am limitless. Because unless your mind is prepared, you won't even recognize the importance of this pursuit in your life. So this is what Ramana is saying, that breathing is something which you start to discipline the mind, and therefore the mind is something which is absorbed, and an absorbed mind becomes a thinking mind. Okay. When mind gains a certain depth and certain focus, it will become thinking mind. Then the subsequent things we will see. Can I do a couple of more verses?
Yeah.
Okay. Then he says, Chitta Vayavash Chit Kriya Yutaha Shakhayor Dvai Shakti Mulaka. Okay. So what he is now talking about is that the mind and the breathing are endowed with ability to know and act respectively. These two are the branches stemming from one power. Okay. Generally we think that the mind is my reality and that is what I am. And I have to do something to quieten my mind. But here he is reminding that the mind is not what we are trying to, it's not that the end in itself is not about creating a perfect mind. Okay? The end is knowing I am consciousness, which is the truth of my mind, minds of everyone, and it is always free from whatever is going on in the mind of anyone. Whether it is a criminal mind or your mind, consciousness is always free. Okay? So that is something that you need to know, that here he says two things are very much important for this inquiry to take place. One is your prana. You have to be alive, okay, in order for this inquiry to take place. And then you need an appropriate mind. Because as we have seen, a bird, even though intelligent, doesn't have intelligence which is developed enough to inquire into the truth of the universe. Okay? But a human mind is capable of looking into things and asking about what is the final reality. Okay? So you need prana and you need mind in order for this inquiry to take place. But generally we think that I am as good as my pranic functions. That's why we have the biggest fear that most of the human beings have is that of mortality. That you are going to die one day. Okay? That death is something which can create tremendous fear in us, and that is what I think I am as good as what? My prana. Okay. And all the different sense of, this fear and sadness and anger, all that comes from the mind. So that means the chitta and mind are two things which are where one's identification is the highest. Both of them are required for this knowledge to take place, but we have to understand that both have their source in one reality, which is what I want to understand. So the pranic function, I am not. Different conditions of my mind, I am not. I am that consciousness which is already free from the condition of my mind or anybody else's mind. Okay. So this is what they say, that they have a mula. Prana and mind, it's not, they are both required, but they have a source in one thing, which is consciousness. This is what you need to know. laya vinashane ubhayarodhane laya gataf punar bhavati no mrutam. Okay. So here he says that there are two forms of resolution of mind. Naya, absorption. Okay. And the mind that has attained absorption is born again, but definitely not the mind which is resolved by knowledge. Okay. So here we see the distinction between the two. Everything that we have seen with reference to quietening the mind, is it karma or it is knowledge? Karma. Right? You make an effort through breathing, you quieten the mind. We saw day before yesterday that you use certain criteria for choosing your action. This is all taking place in the mind to what we call purify the mind, to make it less confused and more alive to realities. Okay, following ethics. Is this karma or it is knowledge? Is it karma? It is karma. Right. Or any practices of meditation, breathing to calm the mind. It's all karma. Okay. So all these are what we say practices to absorb the mind. Absorb the mind so that it is available for this inquiry. What does the inquiry, what does the knowledge, what does it do?
It watches.
It makes you see the relativity of this mind which is making all the decisions, trying to be resolved. It shows you that the very mind and every thought is mithya. And it has a satyam which is consciousness, which is always free from every condition of the mind. In one case, you are using the mind, you are acting to make it prepared, you are making it more cultured, have better samskaras, become a better human being, take the situations when they come with a proper understanding of things. This is what we have seen. This is all what we call, that all goes in the first category of absorption of the mind. Okay? So here he says there are two forms of resolution of the mind. One is the absorption. Absorption is cultivating your mind. This requires, as Shankariji said, effort. Your own personal effort to make your mind resolve through these different techniques. Puja, rituals, prayers, karma yoga, meditations, these are all the ways to absorb your mind. Then, through the inquiry, what happens? He calls it like he's saying it's a total resolution. Okay? So it is Vinasha. But Vinasha is not total destruction, it is understanding its own relativity. Okay. So therefore, as I had said, that the mind understands its own relativity by saying, what is the relationship? Mind is nothing but thoughts. We have to understand, which I will take up a little bit more in detail, what is exactly, up to now we have just used one generic term, what is mind. Next class I will go a little bit more in detail in terms of the functions of the mind. Okay? And what we will see is that no matter what that function is, it is mithya. Who I am is independent of what the mind is, and this is why Ramana calls it that this is the final resolution of the mind. One is an absorption through the various practices, the other one is resolution through knowledge. Okay. So we will see that. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om.